Hello and welcome to the Island Lamb. I'm Diane and this is episode 29, knitting and counting down the days till fall. And today is a gorgeous, bright, blue sky, sunny day, but it's blowing a gale. And I think we're getting a lot of the wind and seas from that hurricane that's out in the Atlantic, not the one that's come up through the Gulf, but the one that's out in the Atlantic. And so the ferries are running. I have heard some flights coming back and forth, but I think that we're having some rip tides and some pretty high seas, and it's pretty breezy out there. So I started off wearing kind of a long sleeve sweater thinking it was going to be cool, but it's not. I have the windows open and it still feels nice and warm. So I'm still wearing a spring summer top, and you've seen this before. I've talked about it many times. I'm not going to go into all the details, but this is a Rosemary Drysdale design. It's called the Eyelet. I made it in Leverette, and I will note what episode you can go back if you're interested in making. It's really comfortable. It looks great with jeans, that combination of this yellow and jeans, and I'm not wearing white. So, okay, it is August 31st. So I am thinking about fall. I'm thinking about, I don't want to push it too much. I know that we've got pumpkins and mums and all those wonderful things yet to come, but I am starting to think about working through my studio a little bit. I've bought some yarn. I have patterns everywhere. I need to do a little reorganizing. I need to start looking and seeing what I have already for fall and winter knits and kind of relocate some of my fall and winter knits. So that's on my mind. I did try my lemon balm. I dried some lemon balm midsummer, and I did put some of that and some chamomile in with my one of those little, you can buy those little I don't know if they're silk or cotton, but they're little tea bags that you can put your own dried teas in, and it was delicious. So thinking about tea, starting to think about fall a little bit, trying not to rush it, but really excited about fall. So the last time I spoke with you was, I think, a little less than 2 weeks ago, and a lot has happened since then. My husband and I have just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary, and we had a lovely day and a lovely evening, and we went out to dinner, and we went to one of our iconic Victorian inns called the Spring House, which just has a magnificent view of the ocean looking out east, northeast. And that night, it wasn't the full blue moon, but it was only a couple of nights before, and so we saw that beautiful moon rising, that big light bulb of a moon, and we had just a wonderful evening. And I think I'm inserting maybe a couple of photos, one our wedding, when we were having our photos taken the day of our wedding, and then also, and I don't know if they even still do this now, but back then the bride and groom would change into what we called our going away outfit. And so I'm showing you a second picture of us in our going away outfits. And so that was 35 years ago. And the other thing that happened just in the last few weeks is my mom came out to visit, and my brother surprised us, and he joined us as well. So my mother came out on a Thursday. He tipped me off on Friday, so he kept it a secret from my mom, and then he joined us on Friday. So we had a fantastic long weekend together, and we went to the beach. We had 2 great beach days. My brother loves to cook. I love to cook, so we were together in the kitchen, and we made one of my dad's recipes, and it was just wonderful. And I think I mentioned in the last episode or the one before that my dad played guitar, and most of his family did. And he taught my brother and I. And I don't play very often because my hands are always on the knitting needles. But my brother brought his guitar, and I dusted mine off, and we sat and we played some guitar. So I'm showing you a picture of my brother the night that we played guitar. So that was wonderful. And then we had an event on the island that wasn't wonderful. One of our iconic hotels right on Water Street, which if you're coming off the ferry, it's the first thing you see. It's right in the middle of Water Street. Beautiful old hotel with a beautiful wraparound deck, a restaurant, a bar. Underneath there are 5 shops. Caught on fire. And gratefully and thankfully, no one was injured and no one was hurt. Our volunteer fire department managed to keep that fire contained to the one building while the 6th alarm fire went off on the mainland, and our ferry company started to bring fire trucks over one after the other all night long. And the fire departments and the Coast Guard on the other side came over with those fire boats that shoot or spray salt water. So for hours, our volunteer fire department contained the fire until the rest of the department came and kept the whole town from burning. So it really was, it was a terrible thing that happened, but it was somewhat miraculous the way it all ended. And a neighboring restaurant's camera caught the spark that happened in a kitchen vent. And that's what started the whole fire. And so because of that videotape, the inspection went quickly, and hopefully the insurance will kick in quickly. They plan to do the demolition mid-September, and then hopefully rebuild pretty quickly. So that was Friday night while my brother and my mother were here. They stopped all service for passengers and passenger cars for a couple of days. They had to shut the power off downtown. So it was quite an event on the island, but this community has come together, and we're raising money and donating money to give to our volunteer fire department as well. So that's kind of what's been going on. All right, so on the mannequin is a gorgeous, fun shawl pattern. And I found this pattern in a holiday issue of Vogue Knitting Magazine from 2015. And that's what the cover looked like. And I have stacks and stacks of Vogue Knitting magazines by season, and every season, just about every season, I will pull out that stack. I have them kind of in those book binders, and I'll pull out that stack and I'll go through and I'll think if there's any inspiration in there, or if there's a pattern maybe I would like to make. And as I was going through those, I came across this particular, and it reminded me of this shawl. So this is called the Fringed Shawl. And the original pattern called for prism yarn and, several colors of prism yarn. And that is a wool and a fingering weight. But I had a whole lot of wool fingering weight that I bought many, many years ago to make the Knit Picks Blossom Fair Isle V-neck pullover sweater. And that was going to be like on a size US 2. And I remember working up the cuff on that. And I working up maybe to just below the elbow, the cuff, and then the color work, the Fair Isle work, and thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through an all-over design on a size 2 needle. So I kind of put a stop to it. I put all the yarn away, and then I came across this pattern. So I'm going to take it off the mannequin, but I wanted you to see, and I'm also inserting some photos of some great ways you can wear it. Of course, you could just wrap it around your neck. You could put a beautiful stick pin in it. I love it with this beautiful leather belt, but I'm going to take the belt off, and I'm going to just give you a closer look at this chevron design. So here we go. So there is a center, and you just really have to keep a marker in the center on the center stitch so you kind of know where you are. And then it's in garter stitch. And I didn't even really, once I kind of figured out what it is this pattern was all about, I stopped following the pattern. Once I got the setup, you're going to put all the stitches on, so that's a lot of stitches, and I don't remember, it could be like 500 stitches. I mean, you've got to get all these stitches, but it's a basic cast on. It wasn't a provisional cast on. I never would have gotten through that. And so the thing that is so interesting and fun is that you're going to leave a tail at the beginning and the end of every row. Okay, and so after you have this all knit up, you've got all this fringe, and you're going to take, it's been a while since I've made it, but I believe you're going to take 3, 3, and 3, and you're going to twist the first set of 3, the next set of 3, the third set of 3, and then you're going to put all 3 twisted ones together and twist those. And my husband came up with a great way to do this, and then you tie a little knot at the end. So we did it with a clipboard. You can actually buy a piece of equipment that does this, that has little clamps. I mean, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then when my husband told me about it, and then I went online and said, honey, you're so smart, because there's actually a piece of equipment that does it. But I used a clipboard, and so I would do the first set of 3, put it under the clipboard, the second set, the third set, and then I would put all 3 together, tie a little knot at the end, and then let it go, and it made all these wonderful little braided fringe. So like I said, I had used the yarn on some other projects, and mostly, I love my blues, and I had used a lot of the blue, and I had used a lot of the yellow, And I don't know why I ever bought the kit in browns, because I really don't wear a whole lot of browns. So I had a lot of browns left and a lot of gold. So that's why you just see little smatterings of that turquoise and a little bit of that gold. And it looks incredible with a jean jacket. So I will, in the show notes, hopefully we'll be able to find this. You'll be able to get this pattern. I know that Vogue has all of their past patterns available digitally, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to find this on Ravelry and include it for you. I just sort of thought about this today and decided at the last minute to include this in this episode. You could make this shorter. You know the Masani fashion designer who did all that, a lot in diagonals. I mean, it's just any way you put it, any way you hang it, it's gorgeous. I think it would be really beautiful in some reds. The original pattern was a holiday issue of Vogue, and they showed it in red, and I'll show you that. So I got that out thinking maybe it'll get cool enough. I just throw that over my shoulders. And so let's see. I also wanted to let you know the open work boat neck pullover by Rosemary Drysdale. That's that beautiful long sleeve drop stitch. It's in kind of an aqua teal. I had that on in the last episode. I talked about that several times. I said you could get it on Ravelry. I said you could get it on Lovecraft, but there's been problems. It looks like it's no longer available on that site. So a viewer by the name of Sumont left a link in my comments of episode 28 that you can click on and you can get that pattern. You can purchase that pattern. It's the open work boat neck pattern, and the link will take you right to it. And I don't think it's that expensive. I want to say maybe it was $6 or $7. So if you're interested, you can find that pattern. I also heard from another viewer, I think in the last episode, I also was talking about working on that the wool and honey sweater by Andrea Mowry. And before we go into it, I just wanted to say two things about what I said last episode. I talked about Knit Companion, that I used Knit Companion and I got messed up because I got off my page. I want to just say, I love Knit Companion. I love it. It was no fault of Knit Companions. It was no fault of Andrea Mowry's. It was me flipping and flipping back and forth and going in and out, and I just got myself on the wrong page. And a viewer, reminded me that I even said it, that you can go in and you can make notes. Well, when you buy the software, you also get the ability to use markers and colors. So I could have very easily clicked on a marker and picked a color, and I could have just made a line right through the pages in KnitPicks, in Knit Companion. So it's such an easy tool to use, and I just didn't want anyone to get the impression that that caused me the problem. I caused my own problem, and I usually do. Another thing that I said about Knit Companion that I loved was that you could put notes in, for instance, the make one left and the make one right. And I said that I always have a hard time remembering that. And I want to read to you this little, let's see if I can get it. So two viewers commented on that. And one was the Yarn Barn, and the other one is Isabel from Quebec. And one referenced that Stephen West has said this, and the other one, I'm not sure where she heard it. Maybe she heard it from Stephen West too. But a good way to remember when you're making a make one left and a make one right, if you go in the front and the back of the stitch. So if you're making one left, I left through the back. I left through you got to get the little ditty down right, but I left through the front door. So if you're doing a left, make one, you go through the front of the stitch. If you're doing a make one right, you say, I'll be right back. So right back. I think I'll start, when I'm thinking about doing that, if I start with the make one right back, that will help me to remember left, front door. So thank you guys for all your input. That's very, very helpful, because I really do have dyslexia, and I do kind of struggle with left and right and front and back, and anything that has an opposite. My brain just wants to immediately go to the wrong conclusion or the wrong answer. So anyway, here's my progress. This is the Wool and Honey by Andrea Mowry. Absolutely gorgeous. I am so happy I took the time to rip it out. And somebody asked me about my ripping out process. Do I use a lifeline? Well, I did not use a lifeline in this. I didn't anticipate that I would have a problem. It wasn't lace. There wasn't a lot of, yarn overs and knit two together. So I won't usually use a lifeline unless I'm on very intricate lace work, especially on fine yarn. So what I do in a situation like this, and I had to rip back quite a bit, and in another project I'll also talk about, I also had to rip back. Well, actually it was the Alpine Bloom. I think I mentioned that I accidentally forgot to change one of the tips, and it was pretty obvious that I had a different texture. So I had to rip that back out. So what I do is, and I learned this on Fruity Knitting, one of Andrea's episodes, I take a needle that has a much smaller tip than the one I've been knitting with. So let's say this was a 4. I will use a 2 with a long needle, and I will identify the row above the row that I want to rip out, and I will pick up those stitches. I'll go all the way around, making sure I'm staying on track. And once I know I have that whole row captured, which would be as if I had had a lifeline in, then I'll rip back to that row. Sometimes the stitches will be in the wrong position, and I don't mind. I'll knit in the back, knit in the front, whatever I have to do to right those stitches in that next row. And I'll be careful not to pull or tight. That's why I like to use a needle that is smaller, so that I don't stretch those needles out. That's why I like to use a nice long needle, so I'm not tugging or pulling. And I don't see a row. I didn't see a row in my Alpine. I don't see that row. I didn't see it in my Alpine Bloom either. So just a gorgeous design. I have the one sleeve going, I have the body going, and what I'm ready to do now is to try it on again. I think I mentioned to you that I was decreasing. I decreased on each side of the stitch underneath the sleeve. I did that a couple of times because I did not want this to be too boxy. I let the sleeve have the extra cast on stitches. I did not do it in the body, and I'm just going to Kitchener that in the end. And the other thing I did, and I hope I don't regret it, but I don't think I will, is on the back. Now, if you know anything about this pattern, when you're working in garter stitch, you end up with a little line going down the back. You can kind of see that, right? And I don't mind that. I know there's a way to get around that, but I didn't mind that at all. And what I did once I started to clear the eyelets is I decreased one stitch on each side a couple of times as well. And I've had it on. It's going to fit beautifully. And now it's just a matter of how long I want it to be. And also I want to make the sleeves longer, and I don't want it to be puffy. There's a one row with a quite aggressive decrease row before you get to the cuff, and I don't want that. I want it to be a smooth. So I'll figure out when and where I want to start making my decreases more gradually, so that when I get to that cuff, it'll be more of a straight look than a puffy look. Gorgeous, gorgeous pattern. Just to remind you, I used the Brooklyn Tweed Tone Light yarn. The pattern recommended Loft. I liked this color. This is the colorway Zest. It is a fingering weight, a tad heavier fingering weight than the recommended yarn, so I did go up a needle size. And I said it was rustic. It's rustic, but it's not scratchy. It's not itchy. Feels good in my hand, and every time I put it on, I don't get a sensation when I put it on. So working on that. And the other project that I skipped last episode because I went too long, is a bit of a story. So I've told you about our fiber mill, Northlight Fiber. And Northlight Fiber was just this sweet little gem on Block Island because, we're very seasonal. There's really nothing going on here in the winter. Our movie theater closes up. We have a restaurant that's open from Thursday through Sunday. The chef comes over from Providence, Rhode Island to cook for us so that we have a place to go on the weekend. We have a little grocery store. There's a coffee shop, but it's not much going on at all. But Northlight Fiber used to be open in the winter. You could go up, you could pick up a skein, you could chat with somebody. They had retreats, and they did some of those retreats in collaboration with Vogue Knitting. It was really wonderful having them here. But they have closed their mill, and they've sold off their equipment, and they have sold off all their yarn to a yarn company in New Jersey. So I went in the last week the shop was open, and I purchased 9 skeins of their Water Street yarn, which is a 40% cashmere, 60% fine merino wool, and it's gorgeous. This was their little logo. And Water Street, of course, we have a Water Street on Block Island. That's what it's named after. The colorway is Snowflake. It's super fine merino and cashmere, 40 cashmere, 60 super fine merino. So I had been wanting to make a cashmere sweater for a long time, and I follow the Republic of Me, as I've mentioned, her podcast, Ivana, and she's been using some beautiful, I believe it's on cones. I could be wrong about that cashmere that she got online many years ago. And I even asked her, where did you get that? And she said, oh, I think she got it on eBay. So I've been thinking about cashmere for a long time. It's an investment, and I wanted it to be something really special. So right around the same time that I was thinking about getting some cashmere, I started watching another podcaster. And the name of the podcast is PurlZknitting. And I'm going to include all her information. Well, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she did a tutorial for a sweater that was part of her of a collection, an Egyptian sweater collection, Egyptian design sweater collection. And the sweater that caught my eye that she did the tutorial on is called the Avaris. And so I watched the tutorial a couple of times. It is such an interesting construction. I've been knitting for a long time, and I had never seen anything quite like this. And I thought, I'm gonna make that, and I'm gonna use this yarn, and this is gonna be one of those special sweaters, not a sweater that I don't wear often, but a sweater that every time I wear it, I'm gonna remember Northlight Fiber, all the wonderful retreats I took there, and the yarns I bought there, and this new construction, for me, new construction. So I have been knitting on it. You would think it would be too warm for me to knit in cashmere, but we've had several cool days. So let's see. This is how far I am with the Avaris. Oh, I'm stuck on something. Okay. So the intrigue begins right away. So you start by casting on for the collar. And you're going to do, and it's a paid for pattern, so I don't want to get into too much detail, but you cast on, you can see there's going to be some rib, and it's almost as if you're creating a welt. So the structure, it's very structural. I would have to say that about this. So you create this neckline. Then, instead of working your sleeves separately, or you're going to start building this piece right here, where you're starting to build up the front of the shoulder and the back of the shoulder. And as you're building this, you're also creating this top band that will become your sleeve. And you're doing German short rows while you're building this, and you're doing German short rows as you're building this. And you can see how this eventually just disappears into what you will then start working on the rest of your sleeve. And that happens on both sides. So at one point in the pattern, you are literally working across from cuff to cuff. And this isn't actually the final cuff yet. We are going to pick up stitches and we're going to build a band. So once you've gotten there, then you have this reverse stocking stitch. Now I'm back on stocking knit, and then I'll get to my band. It is, to me, it just makes me think of, I'm in Austria, I'm in Switzerland, I've come in from skiing all day, I'm sitting by the fire, and I have this beautiful snowflake cashmere sweater on. So that's the little fantasy I'm having while I'm knitting this. And also knowing that I'm using this beautiful, beautiful yarn from Northlight Fiber. The other thing that happened to me while I was watching these tutorials is I got really enamored with the use of stitch markers and progress keepers. Now I'm old-fashioned, I've never even I used a beginning a round marker for the first few years I was knitting, maybe, I don't know. Sometimes I even just made a beginning of row marker by tying the yarn, a different color yarn into a little circle and sliding it on. I didn't use anything fancy, maybe my dad's O-rings, or washers. And little by little, you saw I bought the beautiful beginning of row markers from Northlight Fiber. They have They were specially made by Katrinkles. They're wood and they have the lighthouses on them. But the woman who designed this pattern had these beautiful gem and crystal and gorgeous little stitch markers. So I had to buy some progress keepers and stitch markers. So I bought these little lambs, you know, the island lamb. I had to have some lambs. And then for my wool and honey, I bought these little bumblebees. Look at these little bumblebees and these little daisies. So I think I really romanticized my knitting. I never really thought about that. I think I just do it, and it never occurred to me that it's something that I do often. I just dropped one of my little lambs, but I do. I think about, you know, the yarn, where it's coming from. I think about the designer. How am I going to wear this? How am I going to style it? And that's why I had this vision of myself, like maybe in Switzerland, skiing the Alps. So that's what I've been working on. That's what I've been knitting on. And I just want to see, I'm doing okay with time. But then I also started thinking about, what am I going to knit next? What's on my fall and winter list of things that I want to make? And this morning I was watching Bobby from the Knitter's Niche. I've mentioned her before, another great podcaster. She and I have very similar style. We're similar in age. She's working on the Alpine Bloom. You know, I made the Alpine Bloom. She did a dumpling bag. I've made a dumpling bag. And I had been thinking about this pattern called Autumn League by Two Wands. It kept showing up in my Instagram feed, and I've looked at it a couple of times on Ravelry, but I just hadn't committed to it. It's like a sweatshirt. It's got a little X across the front. If you go and watch Bobby, she's got it finished. She's hanging in the back of her chair. And I was thinking about, well, what am I going to make that out of? And she had very good experience with Lion Brands yarn, which is what was recommended in the pattern, in a denim jean color, like a nice bright denim jean. So I ordered that this morning. So that's coming. So I know I have that coming. Linen Pearl, Pearl Soho had their linen quill on sale. So I bought 2 colors in that, this gorgeous blue and this oatmeal. And I'm thinking maybe a V-neck, lightweight V-neck. I think that Leslie from A Friend to Knit With, another great podcaster, has a great tip about a good V-neck, so I'm going to take a look into that. And then I've shown you this before, but this is the Hardwick by Valley Yarn. This is 50% alpaca, 35% wool, 15% silk. It's kind of a chunky, and I have a gorgeous pattern that I'm going to make that has cables down the front, a big turtleneck. It was my favorite sweater. I caught it, it caught on fire in front of the stove. I couldn't salvage it, so I have this on my mind. So these are all potential new. I'm still working on the Fisherman Knit for my sister-in-law. So I'm into fall. I'm not knitting any more summer weight, any more spring knits. I'm happy with what I have knit, but I'm way in. So let's see, how are we doing? I wanted to also tell you that the woman who designed that beautiful Avaris pattern just had one of her patterns published on the cover with three samples were on the cover of the most recent Pompom magazine. So she is quite the designer and definitely worth checking out. I wanted to mention another new podcaster that I found recently, and her name is Rose, and her podcast is Rosemary Knits. A gentle soul, a gentle spirit. I just loved listening to her and watching her, and she's all about color, and she is surrounded, her studio is just surrounded by all these beautiful, bright, colorful shawls, sweaters, garments that she has made. And so that is one that I would maybe check out, especially if you just would like something colorful to look at and this beautiful, gentle soul and spirit to listen to. I think that's all I have for you today. And I hope that you're in a good place and enjoyed your August and ready for September. I know there's a lot going on in this world. I just hope that you're all safe, and I wish you happy knitting, and I'll talk to you again in a few weeks. Bye.